So just to give you guys a little bit of information about Birch Works. So we are an executive recruiting firm. Like Adam said, we specialize within the quantitative marketing space. Most of our clients are going to span across industries, consumer packaged goods, retail, pharmaceutical, pretty much every industry you can think of we've worked with. Most of the positions that we work on are going to be very statistical. They work with a lot of data analysis. There's going to be some programming and modeling. And a lot of times it's going to be working with marketing data. And just to give you an idea of how we define a big data professional, we define that as somebody who applies sophisticated quantitative skills to data to derive insights and prescribe actions.
And then data scientists are a subset within big data professionals. So the basis is going to be the same. It's still going to have that quantitative skills. It's still going to have the modeling, the statistics, everything that Aaron has already mentioned. But the big difference and the differentiating factor with data scientists is that they use their skills on the big data is a big part of the job, but often some of the traditional quants will deal with pretty large data. The real focus is the unstructured data with data scientists. That's what really creates the difference. So that's anything from scrapes of Twitter feeds to video to audio, kind of data that's not already in discrete rows and tables, things that kind of have to be wrangled before you can really do anything with them or get the insight out of it.
Okay, and so some of the skills that would be required for more of traditional analytics, there's going to be a lot of segmentation studies, predictive analytics, predictive modeling, regression models, propensity modeling. I'm sure you can all imagine how when you're working with marketing data, how those things can come in handy.
And then when it comes to data science, you add in some skills like machine learning, data and text mining, programming, algorithm development. All these things, what they have in common is that they are ways to approach, like I said, that unstructured data. So for instance, machine learning can help out because it can learn from the data. It can detect patterns rather than having to create a more traditional way of parsing out text, for instance, saying, all right, we're going to break every word down and sort this pre-selected list of words by this and this pre-selected list of words by that. Machine learning can detect patterns, do it in a more complex way, ideally kind of look at things like a human would. And really, this can be used for segmentation. It can be used for customer targeting, recommendation engines. It's just one example of a way that data scientists use a kind of non-traditional approach to deal with data that isn't so straightforward. So another part of the job is automation, creating utilities or programs that can do these types of things automatically, take out some of the legwork. We also have data visualization, natural language processing. Again, it's a more complex way of looking at text or looking at any sort of language versus just text parsing or something like that. So it's all a bit more complex, a bit more complicated in order to approach this more complicated, complex data.
And so just to give you a sense for who we typically work with, most of our candidates are going to be masters or PhDs in a quantitative field like statistics, mathematics, or analytics. There's a lot of those programs that are more emerging right now. And most will have hands-on experience with tools like SAS or SQL or R. Those are kind of the big ones within the roles that I work on.
And then when it comes to data science candidates, there is definitely more of a varied background here. They are generally still have a degree, usually an advanced degree in some sort of quantitative discipline. But I see a fair amount of cognitive psychologists, physicists, people who have been maybe doing academic research for 10 years working with strange data or problems that you don't really see all the time in business. because of the fact that data science is so new, there aren't very many data science degrees or established data scientists out there. So it's a lot of people coming from sort of all over the place, a lot of computer scientists, just sort of anyone who has in their course of their work dealt with that unstructured data. So that can be a pretty wide range. As far as tools go, they use the same three that Aaron just mentioned. I see all the time. Obviously SAS, SQL, and R are still used heavily in data science. But in addition to that, they need things like Python, Java, C or C++, more of these widely used scripting languages rather than just the statistical software, because there's more of a variety of what can be done with that. Then there's also tools like MapReduce, which of course is Hadoop or the Hadoop stack, that general ecosystem. Things like Spark. I'm seeing Spark a lot more often as well, and working from the cloud. A word on SAS versus R. I know that we mentioned both of those, but when it comes to data science at least, we're definitely seeing more R. I think overall in analytics, there's still more SAS being used, especially in those more traditional quant roles that Aaron works on. But a good illustration of the way things are kind of changing is if you look at this next slide here, you can see that although overall R is still the minority, when you look at people who are more freshly out of school, people who have less years of experience, more than 50% of them are using R. So people who have just been in school, who are learning kind of the newest methodologies or kind of not doing more of the old way of doing things, are looking at R in large part because it's so flexible. Kind of like I was talking about with coding languages, R is closer to a coding language than SAS is, so it can be kind of bent to do what it needs to and work with some of these newer technologies that the data scientists do use a lot.
And just to kind of explain a little bit more about how my roles work, Adam's completely right. SAS is still the majority. Most of the roles that I'm working on even today are looking for somebody who's been using SAS, has that hands-on experience. But R is really it's an up-and-comer. Younger people do oftentimes prefer it. I have a few companies that I work with that chose not to get a SAS license and are choosing to do the work that they need to do using R and SQL to work with their data and run models. And it seems to be working for them. So I think we'll start to see a lot more of that as years go on, just because R is open source. Some smaller companies or startups are using that as opposed to just buying an expensive license for SAS. And then just to give you a picture of what these big data professionals are coming out of, like these education backgrounds, most of them are going to have an advanced degree. And the research that we've done here at Birch Works, we've realized that about 86% of your traditional analytics people will have an advanced degree.
And then when it comes to data scientists, we see a pretty much even overall breakdown of the advanced degrees. So it's still around 85%. But within those people who do have advanced degrees, we see a lot more PhDs with data science. So I think it's more closer to 50-50 PhDs to masters, whereas like you can see when you're looking overall at the big data professionals, it's much more masters than PhDs. There's a slight difference there when you are dealing with the data scientists.
And then just to kind of give you all an example or a few examples of the roles that we work on, especially for people who are coming out of their degree programs. Here's one. It's for a statistical analyst in the Chicago area. This is a company we've worked with for years. And they were looking for basically an entry-level person coming out of a master's program. They were looking for a quantitative degree program, statistics, quantitative analysis, econ. and they really needed hands-on experience with SAS. This particular client is what we would call a SAS shop. That's their main tool. They even have a very technical interview style, like they're going to kind of grill you on how you use SAS and your knowledge of the tool before they even bring you into the office to meet the team. And they also were looking for people who had internship experience. So we'll continue to talk about how important that is to kind of build your resume. But a lot of our clients, if they're going to look at somebody coming out of a program for kind of their first real job, they're going to want to see where you've used real-world data or where you've been in a business setting kind of using these tools or these methods.
All right, and then here's an example of, this is kind of a misnomer, but I'd say a typical data science job, the types of data science jobs that we've seen for a longer period of time. This is at an ad tech company, relatively new. It was started around 5 years ago. So a lot of these data science roles, especially until recently, were at more of these new data-centric companies, ad tech companies, obviously any sort of software, social media-based companies have been using data science for a few years now. So if you look at this here, this is looking for many data scientists at a few levels. We'll also see this kind of often when it comes to these smaller companies. They put out more general requests for data scientists. They're just really trying to find people who are really smart, who have these skills, but they don't necessarily have the established salary bands or sort of levels and titles that you'll see at a more legacy organization. So they're really, as you can see, like I said, hiring at multiple levels, really just finding people who can do the work they are doing there. They focus on optimizing bidding algorithms, making a software for their clients. So obviously this has a strong coding component. They require programming languages. I see here that they mention R, Python, and Java. I just want to make a quick aside when it comes to these coding languages. People ask me a lot about which one should I focus on, how marketable is Python, how marketable is Java. And what I always say is focus on Python first. If you're trying to find a general coding language, Python is the one to go to right now. If Java is mentioned, it's almost always mentioned second. I'll often see in requirements Python or another scripting language like Java or C. Sometimes it'll just say Python. If it does list them like this with no real indication of which one they prefer, you can still see Python is mentioned first. After, of course, R, because like any data science role, analytics is still the basis. So you're going to need R or SAS. And then on top of that, ideally, usually Python or some other scripting language. Also, you can see that they are looking for Hadoop. It's not a requirement here. This is a very smart employer. I like working with them. They don't have as hard and fast check boxes that you'll see at some of these legacy organizations who don't necessarily even know what a data scientist is, but they know that Hadoop is a big thing, so they want someone who's used to that. These are the types of data science roles that I think are really great to look for. These small companies, not a startup. Like I said, it's been around for 5 years, but it still is flexible and it's very data centric. It's really a great environment if you are looking to get into data science.
Okay, and then another example of more of like an entry-level position for somebody who's coming out of a master's program. This is a company we worked with in New York. It's more of a market research consulting firm. They were looking for another analyst level. A lot of their clients were going to be within the retail space. A lot of these analytics roles, you're going to see a lot of them in consumer packaged goods and retail just because they're running all kinds of analysis on the different campaigns they run. So this person, they wanted a self-starter, somebody who had that hands-on experience, again, with modeling, using real-world data, so you can get that from an internship, or there's other ways to kind of get hands-on project experience, whether it's in school or kind of through other sources online. They wanted either SAS or SPSS. This client was a little bit more flexible on tools. I think they were using SPSS themselves, but they were open to either or. And another thing that a lot of our jobs you'll see, is they want somebody who can effectively communicate with different teams, because as an analytics person, you're going to have to work with cross-functional teams across the organization, and a lot of times you're going to be working with people that maybe are not as technical as you. So it's really important that you kind of are able to communicate technical material to a non-technical audience. That's one of the first things that all of our clients ask for, is somebody who can kind of explain it in layman's terms. So that's a great skill to kind of develop while you're still early in your program. And again, this role was looking for an advanced degree. Most of our roles will look for at least a master's preferred, unless you have several years of related experience in the industry.
All right, and then here is kind of the other end of the data science spectrum. Whereas the other one was an ad tech company, it was 5 years old. This is a huge legacy CPG firm, consumer packaged goods. So obviously they've been around for a long time. CPG for a long time was kind of the top dog. Everyone wanted to be going and doing analytics with them. And things have kind of changed, and now they're a little bit behind the times. So I've worked with a couple CPG firms this year alone who are trying to find some kind of data scientist specialist, data science director, trying to bring in people to implement new technologies, unearth value in mountains of data. As you can see, it's kind of a general request. It's very broad job scope. They need someone who really can come in, who knows what data science is, who can help build the department, who can help figure out what people to hire, who can really teach everyone there how to transition into the 21st century. These jobs are generally not going to be as relevant to people coming right out of school. Obviously, this is not going to be an entry-level role. They want someone who can develop departments, who can manage people and projects, who have a lot of business acumen. A big problem that they often run into with jobs like this is that they expect someone from the industry, but if you're in the CPG industry and you're trying to catch up because no one in CPG is doing data science and you want to catch up to these ad tech firms, you're not going to find a data scientist doing data science at a CPG firm. That's kind of the problem. It's kind of the first. So these roles are much more focused on, like I said, developing departments, data evangelism, kind of really championing the idea of data-driven decision-making, looking at unstructured data. So these are rough roles. Oftentimes they will be put on hold or not have enough support. It's really for these higher level data scientists who are trying to find an opportunity to really make an impact. It's a great opportunity, but it is a lot harder in many ways than dealing with a place like that ad tech firm I was talking about, where data obviously is the center of the business. You're not going to have to convince anyone that data science is important at that role.
Okay, and then just to go through some trends in the market, I know a lot of you are sending in questions as well. Please continue to send those. We're going to address those at the end, but we love seeing those questions come in. So one of the studies that you'll often hear about when you're either reading about big data is the McKinsey study. They predicted that there would be a shortage of 140 to 190,000 big data professionals by 2018. So all of you who are going to be graduating in the near future, you are in a great place. This is a growing market. There is nothing but opportunity, especially as years go by and these companies get more adept at bringing these people in and growing their departments. I've even seen just this year, an increase in jobs that are available. Normally this is a time of year, kind of November or December is when things seem to slow down, and we are still, actively getting new jobs in. So it's a great market to be in, and they're always going to be looking for somebody who are who's very data savvy, at the manager level and the analyst level. And then as you can see here, this is just a nice little image of kind of the growth of big data over time just based on Google searches. It's really becoming a popular term, and as many of you have probably seen, it's everywhere in the news. You just cannot go anywhere without reading about it at least once.
And just adding on to that for a brief second, data science also is becoming sort of the buzzword of the year. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the sexiest job of the century title that has been bestowed upon it by Harvard Business Review. Also, I've seen just in the last month, I think it ranked pretty highly for best work-life balance. I saw it as number 2 on fastest growing industries or jobs with job security. So all of these kind of data and analytics and data science jobs are becoming sort of the big things that are talked about right now. So again, I think regardless of if you're in analytics or in data science, this is, like Erin said, kind of the time to be entering the job market. So here are some tips so that you can enter the job market as effectively as possible. First of all, LinkedIn is such an important part of any job search. Being a viable candidate is all about having a great LinkedIn. That kind of is your presence. It's like it's a lot like Facebook these days. Sort of everyone is expected to have one, and if someone tells you, "Oh, I don't have a Facebook," it's kind of a, "Oh, I wonder why." Why you're doing that with a job search? You don't want to be kind of out of the ordinary in that way. If you don't have a LinkedIn, it's not usually a good sign. So having a LinkedIn, having a current LinkedIn, one with a just sort of nice normal picture of yourself, these are all really important factors. Make it look clean, make it look complete. So having a LinkedIn and being active on LinkedIn is also really important. Joining groups that are relevant, data analytics groups, big data groups. They'll connect you with people in the industry. They'll connect you with potential positions. So I think that LinkedIn, if I had to say one thing that I really want to drive home, make sure you have a LinkedIn and make sure it's very polished. It's almost like a second resume. When you're looking at job boards, obviously things like Monster, Career Builder, those are all a little bit oversaturated. People refer to those as kind of resume black holes. But there are more niche job boards like iCrunchData.com. That is all analytics jobs, generally more focused, generally more of a response if you do submit your resume. I think that don't overlook job boards just because some of them are a little worthless. There are some good ones out there. iCrunchData is a really good example of that.
Yeah, and just to continue the thread on an internet presence, I mean, Adam and I spend almost all of our day on LinkedIn. That's definitely where we try to find most of our people. So having that polished LinkedIn where you are really visible in searches, so that's why having keywords like skills that you have hands-on experience with. So if you have hands-on experience with SAS, so make sure that's listed on your LinkedIn. If you have hands-on experience with programming languages, make sure they're listed, because a lot of times when a new job comes in, that's how we're going to start. We're going to reach out to the people we know. So if we don't already know you, we're going to try and find you. So make yourself visible if you're actively looking for a new job. And iCrunchData, another great one. Another way to kind of grow your network and make yourself more visible is working with recruiters like Birch Works. We have relationships with all of our clients, and we can kind of help bring you to the front of the applicant pool. You're not going to just get lost in a pile of applications that were submitted online. So that's one way to get noticed. And then, as I mentioned before, having internships or any kind of hands-on experience with data is going to be really, really important. So although internships can be, a little bit more difficult to find, it's just kind of being diligent, finding companies that are hiring interns, or talking to your colleagues, finding out where they had internships. Kind of finding an internship where you can be hands-on is going to be really important.
And then when it comes to data science especially, I think Kaggle competitions are a gigantic resource that you should really focus on. We've got a slide on that we can jump to here. So Kaggle competitions, if you're not familiar with them, I'll just give you a brief overview. They are found at Kaggle.com, as you can see. And what Kaggle competitions are these data-centric competitions where real companies share sets of data from their real records. It's all real-world data, real-world problems. And then they present some sort of data analysis problem, maybe segmentation, maybe modeling something. And depending on the competition, obviously there are various measures of how accurate you are. But they will run your solution against whatever they found in the real world and figure out who was the most spot on, who had the closest answer, whose data or whose analysis was the best, and then they rank people by how accurate they were. So a big example I think that a lot of people have heard of is the Netflix $1 Million Kaggle competition, where they had people try and create a recommender engine. And that was a really big deal. I've talked to a lot of candidates who have actually were involved in that, who tried their hand at it. And when you're dealing with sort of being an entry-level candidate or even transitioning from maybe one field to data science or analytics, Kaggle is a really good way to get around that paradox of you need experience to get experience. Especially in the data science space, because like I said, there aren't really many people who have been doing data science for years. Having Kaggle competitions and internships in data science really puts you ahead of the crowd. I'm working with eBay right now, for instance, and they are not trying to hire entry levels, but I know multiple candidates have made it very far in their process, gotten some offers just from a couple internships, and maybe some projects that they did on their own. So Kaggle is a good example of that. I also have talked to people who have created analytics for their online guilds in massive multiplayer games, who figure out, all right, what types of skills should I recruit for, what are we lagging in, and they'll put that on their resume and they'll talk to me about it, and it can help get them a job, because intellectual curiosity is really, really attractive to employers, especially when it comes to data science. They want someone who lives data, who breathes data. So doing any sort of data work with unstructured data on your own, Kaggle or otherwise, is a really good move. And Kaggle competitions you can always put on your resume. Even if you're not #1 in the country, you can put what type of data you used, what type of problem you tackled, how accurate you were, and that will go a really long way, especially as an entry-level candidate.
Okay, and then kind of continuing on, how to make yourself more visible or attractive to employers. Your resume is another avenue that needs to be very polished, really demonstrate the best version of you for employers. So we've kind of given you an example here of kind of a resume we kind of like the format of, this person was entry level at the time, they were coming out of a master's program. One of the things that I know we like to see is when you've very clearly listed your education, the program that you were in, the projects that you've worked on. So whether that's Kaggle or academic projects, those are both relevant. If it's relevant to the industry, if you've gotten hands-on experience that way, I would definitely suggest listing it there. And then obviously if you have internship experience or any kind of professional experience that would be related, adding that as well, making it very clear, concise, and coursework. A lot of these programs have very specific coursework. Some of them are even more related to industry, whether it's like a class in marketing analytics or a class in segmentation and targeting, list those classes, especially if it's relevant to the job you're applying to. It's always okay to have more than one version of your resume or to kind of tailor it depending on the job. And again, even similar to LinkedIn, having those skills listed, in a very visible way. And also certifications. I know I've seen a few questions come in about certifications like SAS. Making sure those are on your resume, and you can even add the little SAS certification badge to your resume. I see that a lot. It's always nice to see. And just kind of making sure it's fairly organized, very clear. A personal preference of mine is to see the education right at the top, just to kind of know where you're coming from. That's just me. I don't know if Adam has any other thoughts.
First of all, I definitely agree with putting the education on the top just to get my taste out there so we get more resumes that we like. Education at the top makes it really easy. We're trained to read from top to bottom, and it sort of tells the story of where you're coming from, what your basis is, what kind of knowledge you have. With that education at the top, though, you can also add something that I'm seeing more and more with data scientists, are MOOCs, massive open online courses, through websites like Coursera. I know that through there, University of Washington has Intro to Data Science and a Data Science certification. Because, like I said, there aren't many data science degrees out there yet, those are a good way to really hone some skills, get some project experience as well. A lot of those courses involve projects. So at the top, you can put your education. You can put any sort of online course education that's very relevant. Companies understand that. Much like Kaggle, those are really good ways to kind of get into the industry, even though it's still relatively new and not everyone knows where to start. Those are two good ways to kind of transition and get those specific skills. Additionally, what I like to see with skills at the top, in addition to software, what types of data you've worked with is really, really valuable for me to see and for hiring managers to see. So you could list, all right, under software, R, Python, Java, Tableau, whatever software you use. And then under that you could say data that you've worked with, social media scrapes, maybe video, biometric data, whatever it may be, lining up your tools and what type of data you've worked with your education really gives a solid picture of what it is you're capable of, what it is you have experience with. So that's something that I like to see.
Okay, and then I know a bunch of you have asked about SAS certification. It's something that we always recommend, especially to candidates who are maybe coming out of a master's program looking for their first job, and even if you've had some years of experience and are going back into a new industry. It's just a great way to increase your marketability. It kind of gives you a little bit of credibility, kind of like, hey, I know this tool, I've taken this exam, I know how to use it, and I can kind of get right in there and work with it. Because a lot of these roles are going to look for somebody who can kind of hit the ground running. They want somebody who they may not have to train in the basics of SAS. So that's a great way to just kind of demonstrate, listen, I know, I got this, I know how to use the tool. And there are different levels of SAS certification. I would say the ones that I see the most are the base programmer and advanced programmer. And I think for getting into your first job in analytics, those are probably the most relevant. It's not required to complete all of the SAS certifications. I think they're a great investment. But especially if you're looking to get into the industry, having at the very minimum the base is a great way to just kind of make yourself stand out. But if you choose to go further, base and advanced are great ones to see. I'll also frequently see the predictive modeler certification and the statistical business analyst, but not as common as a base and advanced. And then I know one of the questions that we kind of went into this knowing we would hear about is salary expectations. So it really can vary quite a bit depending on prior work experience and job location. A lot of what we see for somebody getting their first quantitative job kind of outside of a degree program is in the range of $55,000 to $70,000 a year. And obviously there are going to be outliers on either side of that. What we've seen is a lot of times East and West Coast will pay a little bit higher just because cost of living is higher. And a lot of times, consulting roles where you're going to be working on multiple clients, there might be travel required. Those will pay higher. But there's also going to be a heavy travel component. A lot of the consulting roles that we work on are like anywhere from 80 to 100% travel. So kind of that Monday through Thursday model. So they'll pay more, but you're going to have a lot of traveling for those jobs. And I know some industries may pay a little bit more. Financial industry has a tendency to pay higher. But that's a very segmented industry. Once you're in finance, and it's kind of hard to go the other way. So that's just kind of a picture of what we typically see. Hopefully that gives you some sense of going into your search what to look for.
All right, and then here's just sort of a general list of do's for the job search. Some of this is going to be kind of repeating what we've said before, but these are really important points. First of all, customize your resume and cover letter for each job. Obviously, you don't want your resume to go over a page or maybe two, so you're going to have to maybe pick and choose what projects you're showing or what particular information you want to highlight. Even the descriptions that you give for your specific jobs you've done, you might want to put one of the responsibilities you had higher in the order, make it more emphasized depending on what it is you're trying to go into. So obviously every job you apply to is going to have a different focus or different skills they're looking for. And you can't highlight all of your skills. You have to prioritize. So prioritize based on the job. It takes a few extra minutes for every job submission, but at the end of the day, once you get that job, you're going to save yourself a lot of time job searching because you'll have gotten the job. So that little bit of extra effort goes a long way. Again, keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. When I get a resume from someone and go to connect with them on LinkedIn, if their LinkedIn profile hasn't been updated for 3 years, it doesn't look good. It is confusing. If you are job searching online or if recruiters are looking for you, outdated LinkedIns aren't going to represent you with all your skills. It's not going to represent you at your best. So make sure that you put a lot of focus on your LinkedIn as well as your resume. Stay informed on companies you're interested in. Follow them on Twitter. Follow them on LinkedIn. Just know what's going on with them. If you do get interviews there, you need to be able to speak intelligently and discuss what's going on with the company, discuss what issues they're facing or what's changed recently. Anytime you're in a job interview, the more it's a discussion versus a cold question and answer session, the better. So when you come to an interview, have questions. That goes along with staying informed on the companies. You want to have intelligent questions. You want to have questions that show that you really thought about what you would be doing there or what you could bring to the table or what they need versus a question about how many vacation days you get every year. That never looks good. So make sure you are making educated questions and showing serious interest in companies. And then finally, always send thank you cards or emails to everyone you speak with. It's another little step that makes a huge difference. It'll keep you fresh in their mind. It's professional. There are plenty of people out there who would be turned off just by the fact that you didn't send a thank you email. That's sort of the way things are done. And as I've mentioned a few times with the job search process, you don't want to deviate out of some of those things. Things are done that way for a reason. Make yourself stand out with your skills. Don't make yourself stand out by being the guy who didn't send an email afterwards. Just do your due diligence and stick with those little tiny steps that do make a big difference.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize that enough. Sending those thank you emails really does add that personal touch. Just to lead off the don'ts of a job search, if you do send thank you emails, make sure they're a little bit personalized. If you meet with 3 people, don't send the same note to all 3 people. Kind of put in a little extra effort to kind of make the note speak to your conversations with those people.
And then I just want to add into that for a second. If you are personalizing them, don't just find and replace words. We talk to candidates sometimes where we'll do our intake interview with them, and then the next day I'll get an email talking about how they're really excited to come to Birch Works and start working on some product or something else that just doesn't really make sense given the arrangement we have. I know that people do that. I know it's easy to find and replace. But if you're going to do that, at the very least, read over the email carefully before you send it. Make sure you're not saying something that's kind of nonsensical or that just doesn't work in the context. So be careful about that.
Okay, and obviously job search, it's really important to be responsive. If you get a response to an application, try to respond as quickly as possible. Show your interest, be animated. Don't just let something sit in your inbox for days. And when it comes down to interviewing, make sure you have examples prepared. So like you have your resume, you have your LinkedIn, you have those projects listed. Make sure that you can explain those projects in a step-by-step way. Really demonstrate like the methods you used, your approach to the problem, the tools you used, and again the data you worked with. Because a lot of interviews, especially early on, they'll ask you to walk through a project that you've done recently, and they're going to want you to be able to kind of have a polished answer for that, and then be prepared to answer questions about it if they decide to dig deeper. Don't limit your search to one outlet. Use those niche job boards like iCrunch Data, use LinkedIn, work with recruiters, kind of try and get yourself out there in every way you can. That will just kind of make you more visible and just increase your chances of finding the right position. And then also, if you do get interviews, make sure you do your research, do your homework. That's why we mentioned kind of following those companies you're interested in. Make sure you read about current news articles, check out their website, be very familiar with the job description. You want to be very intelligent in your conversation with them, like Adam had said. Like you need to be able to speak intelligently about the work they do and kind of their industry. You don't have to be an expert, but it should show that you've done your homework on them. And just like anything else, don't get discouraged. A job search is going to take time. Don't expect to get a job tomorrow, although there are people I'm sure that that's happened to. It will take a little bit of time, so just kind of keep your spirits up and just keep trying. And then just to give you all a little bit of information about kind of working with recruiters and kind of how it can help. A lot of times it will help you get in front, kind of cut to the front of the applicant line. I'm sure all of you are familiar with those online portals where you kind of submit all your information online. There's no interaction with a human being. And then you get like a notification that like, hey, we've received your application. We often refer to those as the black hole of HR. We kind of get to skip that process. In addition to that, we'll help you expand your network. So we have access to positions that maybe you couldn't find on your own. So kind of just a great resource to expand that aspect of your network. And it's also a great way to practice interviewing in a low-stress environment. When you talk to me and Adam, it's going to be a little bit more informal. Obviously you want to present your best self and really be able to speak to your experience, but we're not going to be grilling you. We're going to really want to get a sense for your background, who you are, what you're looking for, and seeing if anything we have would be a good fit. And in addition to that, we do have long relationships with our clients. So if you do choose to work with us and we are able to get you interviews, we do try and give you as much help as possible. We try and give you a little bit of insight into what you might expect or how to best prepare. So that always kind of helps kind of put your best foot forward.
All right, and I actually just saw a question about this come in, so this is very timely. Just sort of giving you a little bit more information about how exactly we work, about the logistics. So we partner with our clients to find people for their unique opportunities. So we work with these, like Erin said, we often have very long relationships with clients where they'll use us repeatedly to fill jobs, or it might be they have a really specific, hard-to-fill data science or analytics job, and they hear about Birch Works and come to us for help on that. In any case, we are working on specific jobs with specific employers, and then from there we try to find people who would be good fits, whether that is candidates we've already worked with. So if we've spoken with you, we have you in our database, we're familiar with your work and the things you're looking for. So if a new job comes in, if you would be a fit for that, we'll let you know. Otherwise, we try and find candidates for those roles. So we try and tune in with the people who are available out there, reach out to our network, reach out to new people. So the way that you would apply, you can contact us through our website, which is birchworks.com. There's a way for candidates to get in contact with us through there. Also, we have job postings on our website. We post jobs on LinkedIn. So applications come in from all over the place. But the process on your end is very similar to a traditional job search. There's a couple more layers and steps. So you would first talk to someone here, whoever would be the most appropriate recruiter, do kind of a, like Erin said, kind of an informal intake interview where we would just chat, figure out what your priorities are, what your preferences are, what your skills are, what you've done, what you might be able to do. Just really get a sense of who you are, both professionally and what your passions are, what you want out of your job search. And then from there, we send your resume to the clients that we think you might be a good fit with. And from there, it gets, and that's only if you okay it, of course. We're not just going to send your resume out without your approval. So if we talk to you and we have jobs at that point that might be a good fit, we'll tell you right then and there, all right, here's a position I'm working on with this company. This is what they want. Is it something you'd be interested in? Would you like us to submit you? And then if a job comes in at a later date, we will call you up then and say, oh, a new job came in. I remember we talked about this and this and this. So given this new job, is that something you'd be interested in? Then we submit your resume. Once we hear back from the company, we'll either let you know if they decided to pass, or we'll work with you to set up interviews. And from there on out, it is very, very, very similar to a traditional interview process, job search. The only real difference is in some cases you'll be talking to us to schedule these interviews, and we'll get a little bit of prep and a little bit of tips on how to approach it. If it's a client we've had for a while, we might know the hiring manager and tell you, oh, well, they're this way or they're that way, or they really like to see this. So it's a little bit of coaching. And we kind of help you through the process, but you'll still do the interview process as you would normally. You'll probably end up going in for an on-site, and then once you're hired, you work for the company you interviewed with. That's the end of our part of the process. Contract work can work a little differently, but we focus almost exclusively on full-time roles. So once we place you, you're there, and it's like you had gotten the job directly through the company. So that's sort of the overview on the logistics of how we work. I know some people were questioning that.
Okay, and then I know another big question in your job search is going to be if you're an international student, kind of what that looks like for you. So it's a tough question. The way I see it, it does just kind of add another layer to your search. You know, I know here at Burchworks we work with a lot of clients that, you know, do work with, you know, H-1B visa transfers. We have several clients that will sponsor that initial H-1B, but it is a little bit fewer and far between. So just like I said, it's another step to your search. My one suggestion would be to really know all about your options. If your program is eligible for the STEM extension, that's always good to know, just because it gives you a little bit more time in your search. And we always like when people are really upfront about their status. At least here at Birch Works, we're very familiar with student visas and the OPT. We're very familiar with kind of what that looks like and what it means. And we need to know that in case we do have a client come in and they're like, yes, we'll sponsor visas. Send us anyone who thinks would be a good fit. That's when we'll reach out. We would never share a job with you that you wouldn't be able to apply for. We always kind of want to field that question early on. And one thing about working with a recruiter like Burtch Works is we do have those relationships with companies that we know are going to be visa friendly. So it's just another way to kind of open up your search a little bit more and kind of help you have more access. And as far as suggestions for your search, having internships and that hands-on experience is going to be really important, just because you want to make yourself stand out. You need to be like the A+ candidate, person they can't turn away. You really want to get picked up on by most of the places that you're applying for. So it's just kind of going to be like a numbers game, kind of staying diligent, keeping going on your search and applying where you can, and then working with recruiters to kind of make sure that you have access to all the jobs that would work for you. Okay, and then just as far as some suggestions, like we've said, kind of try and keep your skills up to date. Do any kind of additional trainings you can, whether it's through online courses or adding electives to your program. Make sure your resume and your LinkedIn are always current. Grow your network, linking with recruiters, linking with people from your program. Really try and put yourself out there. And then finding internships or doing Kaggle competitions are just going to help you in the long run.
Additionally, in talking about projects and things like that, I just want to stress again, for data science roles, not all these projects are even necessarily a Kaggle competition or something formal. Employers just really like to see passion and lifelong learning. So even if, like I said, that means that you're doing analytics for your guild on some online game, that's still something to talk about. That's still something to mention. Any sort of work you can do with data, anything that you are interested in, really nurture that interest, practice your skills, do something that's interesting to you, that does involve sort of that messy data. And that involves staying hands-on any way you can, doing the projects, doing the work. That's what's most relevant to employers, seeing that you can do the work that they want to do. Theoretical knowledge is great, but you need to be able to demonstrate some sort of practical abilities. So you can also attend conferences, webinars, meetups. There's a lot of different sources for things like that. I know there are data scientists and analytics groups on meetup.com. And that has lots of informal networking opportunities for professionals in whatever field you may be interested in. And then there is the American Statistical Association. They have a strong chapter here in Chicago that you can join. They have events all the time. It's just another really good way to stay active in the community, to network, and maybe even to meet someone who may be able to connect you with a job. Maybe you'll meet a hiring manager somewhere who you chat with over dinner, and they realize, I'm trying to find someone who's worked with data like this or who's interested in this type of thing. So you never know where those opportunities may lead you.
Okay, and so I know we're getting close on time, but we wanted to answer some of your questions that have come through. So let's see. I saw one comment about internship placements. I know we've talked about it a lot. Unfortunately, Birch Works does not specialize in internship placements. We do full-time permanent roles. That's our primary focus. But I know that there are several companies that do have internships for analytics professionals, whether it's data science or just traditional analytics. It's just kind of doing your research, doing your homework, and kind of finding who is doing intern programs. So that might be working with other students, kind of finding out where they interned, or connecting with alumni, seeing if their companies would do an intern for a summer or for part of a semester. That's just going to kind of take a little extra time, but that's just part of the process. Okay. And then let's see. And then we saw another question kind of related to internships, where if you go into a consulting field and you want to switch over to product-based analytics for a full-time job, kind of how would that affect your chances? I honestly think that consulting roles are great. You're working with lots of different kinds of data. You're working with different clients, different teams. I think that's very applicable in the market. I think it's a great way to kind of even find out what interests you. So I think it's a great way to kind of grow your skills, find out what areas in the industry are of interest to you. Okay. Let's see. And,
all right, and then I see a more data science related question here that just jumped out of the chat window. One moment. All right, there we go. So the question is, what advice do I have for someone who has 10 to 15 years of professional experience not in data science, like IT or telecom, and how they can get themselves into a mid-level career job? That is a very, very tough question. If you're trying to get into data science from IT or even from analytics, analytics is definitely the best way to make that jump. If you're already in analytics, then you have, like I said, kind of the biggest component of data science is still that analytics with all of these ancillary skills to help you deal with unstructured data. If you're coming from something like IT, the odds of getting a mid-career level job is not great. You may have to drop pay, you may have to drop levels, you may have to do essentially an entry-level position in data science. I've worked with a lot of candidates who have worked their way up in finance for the last 20 years and now are looking to take a big pay cut and kind of start over as a data scientist. If you're in a job where, as chance sort of had it, you did some data science work, that's really the best situation you could be in. Also, if you are sort of mid-career, if you have any sway of the analytics at your current organization, do try and do some more advanced stuff. Try and look at that unstructured data. But getting a mid-level job in data science from anything outside data science is very difficult. That's sort of why a lot of these jobs are so hard to fill, because so few people have been doing this type of work for a while. So I wish I had better advice for you there, but the best advice I can have is if you're looking to get into data science, it's a commitment, and you may have to take more of an entry-level position for the time being and work your way up.
Okay. Let's see. And then I know another question came in kind of asking more about the skills. And how are candidates with basic exposure to multiple skills, SAS, SQL, Python, R, Tableau, etc., versus candidates with advanced skills and just 2 or 3 of those? How would they compare, or how can they stand out? I would say that if you have just basic exposure to several skills, I would devote some time to really developing some of those. So whether you want to get into data science or whether you want to get into more traditional analytics, you kind of have to know that for yourself. But most of the roles that I work on want somebody with pretty deep knowledge of SAS and SQL. They want somebody who knows the ins and outs of the tools and the language and who can really work with it right off the bat. So if you want to get into a role, or an industry that's using a lot of those tools, I would devote some time to getting certified or doing some projects where you can be hands-on. SAS and SQL and R are like the big ones for more traditional analytics. SQL, since I know I saw some questions come in about that, SQL is really important for a lot of these roles because that's how a lot of these companies are storing their data. They're storing it in like a SQL warehouse. So a lot of the roles that I work on want somebody who's very comfortable with SQL queries and who, somebody who can come in, manipulate the data, get it ready to do some analysis in SAS. So really kind of growing those skills, and the same would go for data science. If that's the path you want to go down, if that's where your interests lie, devote some time to developing those skills because having that depth of knowledge is going to pay off for you.
When it comes to data science, I just want to add on to that. I think that she hit the nail on the head. You need to have the advanced skills. Having kind of basic knowledge of a bunch of tools is pretty much not going to get you anywhere in data science. You can't really do the work that way. Data science positions are very hard to get. They're very complex. You have to know a lot of different things very deeply. So when it does come to candidates who have kind of that basic skill, I often advise look for a job in analytics, maybe do some Coursera work, Kaggle competitions, more and more things until you can take a data science project and do it end to end. It's going to be really hard to get a job in data science because, as I've said before, a lot of these departments are pretty new, so they don't really have the capabilities to bring in someone who knows a little bit of this and a little bit of that and teach them because there's no one there to teach them. There's no time for that. So with data science positions, you pretty much need to know how to do data science end to end, go from that unstructured data as well as things like SQL or MongoDB or Hadoop file system, transform that data, do analytics, get business insights, prescribe action. It takes a lot of skills at a pretty deep level.
Okay, so I think we're kind of running over the hour right now. So we'll probably wrap this up. Just to summarize and to finish out, there should be a recording of this presentation that will be available to you either later today or this week. So we'll make sure we share that with Steve and gives you access to that. And going forward, if anyone wants to reach out to us directly, here's some information about our contact. You can always feel free to email us or just submit your resume through our website at birchworks.com. And our contact information is also on our website. You can also feel free to link in with us. So we hope that this was really helpful. Hope it helps you get set up in your job search and gives you some idea of where to go and how to set yourself up for success. And we look forward to working with you all in the future. Thanks very much.